is a very dramatic statement to make, but I think it's on the mind of a lot of Americans. Are we headed towards a larger conflict that could potentially end up in a World War III kind of situation?
Yeah. Well, first, you're absolutely right that it's hard to know and hard to predict. I think it's fair to say that Iran doesn't have a lot of good options. In the past, when I told you, Obama negotiated this nuclear deal to try to avoid war. One reason for that is at that time, Iran had effective proxies throughout the region. It could turn Hezbollah loose, and which would fire a bunch of missiles at Israel. It had this ballistic missile force that we were concerned about, missiles that could hit our bases. It had Shia militia groups in Iraq and Syria. It had air defenses, and it's not something you'd want to take lightly. Is escalating and going to war. Iran now, its options have really been reduced over the past year through conflict with Israel. Israel, as we know, has decimated, significantly wiped out Hezbollah, done the same to Hamas. Iran has launched ballistic missiles at Israel, but Israel's shown that with U.S. and other help, they can largely defeat that. So that's one reason why Iran is going to have to be very careful here not to. So, the United States and Israel took out its vaunted and valued nuclear enrichment program. It's going to be hard for Iran not to respond to that in some way. But best case scenario is Iran will realize that if it overreacts in the response and kills Americans on a base somewhere, and we mentioned there's Shia militia groups that can turn loose in Iraq and Syria, could get the Houthis to strike. It has already shot ballistic missiles not just at Israel but at U.S. base in Qatar just today. Best case scenario is it does sort of performative response. We all hope that it doesn't lead to casualties, on any side, and then Iran can say, we stood up for our rights, and nobody attacks Iran without paying a price, and we can avoid the escalation. In which case, then we're closer to the success that the Trump administration is claiming. We would have, set back the enrichment program, at least in the narrower sense. Again, we don't know longer term, but that would be closer to success. The problem is, it's all unpredictable and dangerous. And to the latter part of your question, yes, it could also go wrong. So if, Iran fires a few ballistic missiles and they get shot down and the Trump administration chooses not to overact in response, then we might be able to avoid this huge escalation. And by the way, that's kind of what happened in 2020 after the Trump administration assassinated the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani. Iran fired a bunch of ballistic missiles at a U.S. base in Iraq. They did a lot of damage and wounded seriously American service members, so it was a really big deal. But fortunately, they didn't kill them, which would have led, I think, to a massive U.S. response. So that's the risk here is if Iran does respond in a way that, let's say they mine the Strait of Hormuz to try to interfere with shipping or shoot a missile or sink a ship, or if one of these ballistic missiles gets through and kills American service members, I would imagine the United States would, respond militarily. And that's when we could get into escalation. Iran has, supported terrorism in the past. They could do that. That's how this could get out of control. And I think, the Trump administration, it will be important to avoid that type of escalation, because that's the other, strategy Iran could embrace is just hunker down and say, okay, you want to have be back into a Middle East war? Bring it on. You can bomb us all you want, and we'll bomb back, and you'll kill more of us than we'll kill of you, but you're not going to like it in the long run. That's the biggest near-term risk of this getting out of control.